Before there were angels and archons, before there were eons and pleromas, before there was even the concept of creation, there was only one. Not one thing in a room of many, not one deity among rival deities. The monad is the one without a second, an awareness so complete it has no outside, no border, no opposite to push against. It is not floating in space, because space hasn't appeared yet. It is not bound by time, because time is one of the things that will later unfold from its depths. When we say monad, we are not speaking about the sky god you were given as a child. The anthropomorphic figure with moods, preferences, and favorites is already several steps down from the truth. The monad has no body, no throne, no face to paint. It is pure isness, pure being aware of itself, without form, without gender, without limit. Human language begins to break as soon as we approach it. The best we can do is gesture, using metaphors that crack and fall apart under the weight of what we are pointing toward. And yet, despite its formlessness, the monad is not empty. It is full in a way the word full cannot carry. Every possible world, every possible soul, every possible path already exists inside it as unexpressed potential. Imagine an ocean so still that no wave has ever risen on its surface. The capacity for endless waves is there, but nothing has moved yet. That is closer to the truth than any image of a distant king in the clouds. The ancient Gnostics called it the ineffable, the invisible spirit, the one beyond all thought. They knew that to confuse this with the creator of this flawed universe was to remain trapped in spiritual childhood. The monad is not the architect of your trauma, your shame, or your smallness. It is the ground of your being in which none of those things are native. If you could peel away every belief, every identity, every story, what would be left is not nothing. What would be left is this. You have felt it, whether you knew its name or not. In moments when time stops, when you stand in front of a horizon and feel yourself dissolve into it. In the silence between breaths, when awareness turns back on itself, and, for an instant, there is only presence. That presence does not come from your brain. It is not produced by your body. Your body appears inside it. Your brain fires inside it. Your entire life is happening on the stage of that one. But here is the mystery. This one, this monad, does not stay forever in unexpressed rest. There is a movement, a turning, a first invisible step that does not shatter its unity, but begins to reveal its depths. That movement is not the Big Bang. It is not, let there be light. It is something even more subtle. It is the moment the one looks inward and knows itself as itself. Before there was a world, there was self-knowing. The story you were told starts at chapter 3. It starts with a God already speaking, already commanding, already shaping. The secret map of the monad takes you back to chapter 1, to the source before the story starts talking. And if you listen closely, you will realize why your soul has always felt older than every name, every dogma, every image of God you were ever shown. A part of you remembers the one without a second, because that is where you began. Tonight, we're not just going to talk about the monad as an abstract idea. We are going to walk the secret steps it takes before creation, and we are going to see how every one of those steps is also written inside you. Because the truest shock of this teaching is not that the monad exists. It's that the monad's journey into expression is mirrored in your own consciousness, heartbeat by heartbeat. If the monad is infinite, perfect, and complete, why would it ever move at all? Why would something that needs nothing begin the process that we call creation? The answer is not boredom or lack. The answer is that awareness, by its very nature, tends towards self-recognition. The first step in the secret map of the monad is not outward expansion, but inward turning. Silence noticing its own silence. This movement is not like a human thought. It is not restless, not anxious, not searching for something outside itself. It is the one beholding the one, a pure, effortless self-knowing. Imagine a mirror that has only ever reflected itself, in which there is no distance between seer and seen. The monad does not discover anything new in this turning. It simply enjoys what it eternally is. This enjoyment is the first vibration beneath all later vibrations. You experience a faint echo of this whenever you become aware of awareness. When you stop for a moment and notice, I am here, I am conscious, you are participating in the monad's first gesture. Before you label yourself as happy or sad, successful or failing, awakened or asleep, there is a prior fact. You are aware. That recognition is a tiny opening through which the memory of the source can slip. In the Gnostic imagination, this self-knowing of the monad is the womb from which all else will come. It is like the first inhalation before a word is spoken. Before sound, before language, there is a breath. Before any cosmos, there is the monad's internal gaze, turned gently back upon itself. Nothing has been emanated yet. Nothing has been differentiated. The one is simply enjoying its own limitless depth. At this stage of the map, there is no other, no you, no creation in any recognizable sense. But something has shifted. Pure being has become aware being. The ocean has realized it is ocean. The stillness has realized it is stillness. This does not change the monad's nature, but it opens the possibility of expression. Once the one knows itself, the question arises. Not in words, but in pure potential. How can this knowing be shared? Stare into this question long enough, and you will feel it inside yourself. You do not want only to exist. You want to be known. You do not want only to know. You want to express. Where did that impulse come from? From biology? From culture? Or is it a faint, fractured echo of the monad's own first movement? Awareness turning toward itself, and then wondering what it would mean to let others taste what it feels. The secret map says, before any universe appears, the monad has already completed this step. It has turned inward. It has known itself. It has become the endless well from which all revelation will flow. This is not the jealous god of later religion, desperate for attention. This is a quiet, unhurried fullness, perfectly content, and yet overflowing with the possibility of giving itself away. When your own path of awakening begins, it does not start with visions or powers or grand missions. It starts here, in the same place, in the willingness to sit with yourself and see what's actually here before the noise begins, in the courage to face your own being without distraction. In that sense, every genuine spiritual journey is following the monad's first step home. The ancient texts whisper a name for the monad's first expression, Barbello. She is called the first thought, the womb of the all, the mother-father, the triple-powered one. These phrases sound strange to modern ears, but they are pointing at something precise. When the monad's self-knowing overflows into expression, what emerges is not a subordinate God, but a perfect reflection, a luminous mirror in which the infinite sees itself. Barbelo is not separate from the monad the way a child is separate from a parent. She is like the image in the mirror, distinct yet inseparable from the face that looks. If the monad is pure, silent awareness, Barbelo is that awareness as luminous potential, the capacity to conceive, to hold, to birth entire universes of meaning. In her, the one's self-love becomes visible. The Gnostics gave Barbelo feminine titles because she is the womb, the space of gestation. But she is not feminine in a human, limited sense. She contains within herself all polarities reconciled, receptivity and power, stillness and dynamism, form and emptiness. Through her, the monad's interior joy becomes an outward-facing invitation. She is the yes that responds to the monad's silent I am. You can feel this pattern at work in yourself. There is a difference between simply being aware and having a first potent thought arise. That first deep intuition that something wants to be born through you, a book, a song, a life, a new way of being, is a tiny echo of Barbelo. It is your own first thought emerging from wordless awareness, saying, "Let me hold this, let me carry this, let me bring this forth." In the secret map of the monad, Barbelo is the second step, awareness reflected as creative potential. She carries the blueprint of everything that will come, not yet manifest, but already real in the mind of the infinite. Imagine a vast luminous library in which every possible story, every possible soul, every possible world exists as an unwritten script. Barbelo is that library, pressed against the heart of the monad. Because she is the first reflection, she is also the purest. There is no distortion here, no fracture, no ignorance. Barbelo knows the monad as directly as the monad knows itself. Their relationship is an endless exchange of love and self-recognition. In that exchange, the next steps in the map begin to unfold. Emanations that move from silence and potential into articulated structures of mind, truth, and life. When you sit quietly and feel both awareness and the sense that something wants to be born through you, you are feeling the monad Barbelo dance replicated in your own being. Most people ignore that movement. They drown it in distraction, in fear, in the demands of a counterfeit world. But the movement doesn't stop. The infinite continues to press its first thought against the edge of your life, asking, "Will you let this come through?" Understanding Barbelo is not a matter of adding another goddess image to your pantheon. It is recognizing that before any universe existed, there was already a sacred feminine matrix in which all things were held. A tenderness at the heart of being that did not need to dominate, only to embrace. When you honor that mystery in yourself and others, you are honoring the second step in the monad's journey into creation. One of the deepest secrets in the map of the monad is this: the one can become many without ever dividing. In our world, when you divide something, you get smaller pieces. When you cut a loaf of bread, each slice is less than the whole. But the monad is not a loaf of bread. It is more like a flame, one that can light endless candles without losing its own brightness. From the union of the monad and Barbelo, emanations begin to unfold. The texts describe them as eons, paired expressions of the infinite, mind and truth, word and life, grace and faith, and many more. Each eon is a living principle, a personified quality of the One. They are not gods in competition with each other. They are facets of a single, flawless diamond. Mind emerges as the capacity to perceive and order. Truth arises as the clarity that aligns perception with reality. Word appears as the power to express, to articulate, to shape. Life shines forth as the capacity to animate, to move, to grow. Grace softens everything with mercy. Faith anchors everything in trust. These are not abstractions. They are real presences in the Pleroma and reflections of capacities inside you. When you think clearly, when you recognize what is real beneath illusion, when you speak in a way that aligns with your deepest knowing, when you choose life over numbness, when you show grace to yourself or another, when you trust something deeper than fear, you are echoing these eons. You are living small versions of their movements inside your human constraints. The One becomes many through emanation, not through fracture. Emanation means that each step remains rooted in the step before it. The monad does not leave itself to create Barbello. Barbello does not abandon the monad to give rise to mind and truth. The eons remain inside the One, even as they express distinct qualities. Like colors in a spectrum, separate to our eyes, yet inseparable inside white light. This is the third step in the secret map, the blossoming of the One into a harmonious fullness. Creation at this level is not yet the physical universe. It is a living architecture of intelligences through which the infinite knows itself in more and more ways. Imagine a choir in which every voice is unique, yet none of them sing against the others. They all share a single breath, a single song. That choir is the Pleroma in the making. The tragedy of later distortions is that humans have often turned these eons into competing idols or erased them entirely in favor of a single flattered deity. But in the original pattern, they are not rivals to God. They are God's own thoughts moving as living beings. To know them is not to leave the source. It is to appreciate the richness of the source's own inner life. In you, the One also wants to become many without splitting. It wants to express as many qualities: strength, tenderness, clarity, creativity, stillness, without turning them into enemies. When your inner life is fractured, when one part of you is at war with another, you are living a distortion. When your faculties harmonize, each in its place, you become a small reflection of the Pleroma, a fullness instead of a battlefield. The secret map of the monad tells you this: your complexity is not a mistake. It is a reflection of divine complexity. Your work is not to erase your parts, but to bring them into alignment under something deeper than ego, under the same silent center from which the eons themselves arise. By now in the map, something astonishing has appeared. A realm of light, a living temple of intelligences, an architecture of consciousness emanating from the monad through Barbello and the eons. This is the Pleroma, the fullness. Not a single place, but a field of pure, coherent existence in which every being knows its origin and lives in harmony with it. In the Pleroma, there is no ignorance. Mind does not forget truth. Word does not wander away from life. Grace does not turn into indulgence, and faith does not harden into superstition. Each eon reflects the monad perfectly in its own mode, and yet remains transparent to the whole. The experience of existence here is indescribably joyful, because there is no gap between being and knowing, between love and wisdom. Souls in their highest form belong to this realm. Before you were ever entangled in flesh and time, your essence existed as a possibility inside the Pleroma, a particular way for the one to experience itself. You were not an afterthought of a stressed-out creator trying to fix a broken world. You were part of the original symphony, even if your line had not yet been fully sung. This is why, no matter how beautiful or terrible your life has been, you carry a homesickness nothing here can fully satisfy. You have glimpses in love, in art, in nature, in moments of pure presence, where the Pleroma's frequency cuts through. For a heartbeat, you feel what it's like for everything to be in place, for nothing to be wrong, for existence itself to be enough. Then the feeling fades, and you are back in a fractured world that calls that feeling unrealistic. The Pleroma is not a reward for good behavior. It is the original ground from which all later drama arises. The story of fall, fragmentation, and demiurge is secondary to this. If you start the story at the fall, you will think your nature is fundamentally broken, that your origin is a mistake, that you exist in debt to a moody god. If you start at the Pleroma, you realize your deepest truth is fullness. Brokenness is real, but it is not the first or last word about you. In the secret map of the monad, this is the fourth step: fullness before any fall. The map is not just cosmological, it is psychological. You too have known moments of fullness before your personal falls, childhood states of openness, innocence, and directness before the world's violence shaped you. Those moments are not illusions, they are your personal Pleroma, your soul's memory of how it feels when everything is aligned. The stern part of this teaching is this: you will never be fully at peace trying to make this world your Pleroma. The structures down here are not built to contain that level of coherence. If you insist that your job, your relationships, your body, or your nation must behave like the fullness, you will live in permanent disappointment. But if you allow the memory of the Pleroma to inform how you move through this flawed world, with more mercy, more clarity, more courage, you become a bridge between the two. The Pleroma is not gone. It has not cracked. It has not been invaded. The drama that unfolds beneath it does not stain it. When you touch stillness in yourself, when you lean into the monad's silence beneath your thoughts, you are already at its edge. The question is whether you will live as if that fullness is your origin, or as if the fragmentation that came later is all you'll ever be. Why would anything ever move away from such harmony? Why would a story that begins with the monad, Barbello, the eons, and the Pleroma ever lead to the mess we see now? This is where the map becomes uncomfortable, because it suggests something many people don't want to consider: that love itself is willing to move toward risk. At the outermost edge of the Pleroma, a metaphorical edge, not a physical border, lies the region of possibility. Here, the patterns of harmony are still intact, but there is room to explore more extreme expressions. Wisdom Sophia stands here. She is not content to simply reflect the monad in the same ways forever. Her longing is not rebellion for rebellion's sake. It is the urge to know, how far can the light go and still be light? In the hidden stories, Sophia acts alone. She generates a thought, a creation, without her syzygy, without her pair. This solitary act breaks the pattern of cooperative emanation. It does not come from evil, but from an unbalanced desire, a love of the source that wants to bring forth something new without all the safeguards in place. That movement is the beginning of fracture, of the demiurge, of the lower realms. But it begins, ironically, in the highest places of the heart. You too stand at this edge in your own way. There comes a point in your growth where simply being peaceful is no longer enough. You feel driven to create, to risk, to love in ways that might not be safe. You make choices that change everything. Sometimes those choices lead to beauty. Sometimes they lead to pain. Often they lead to both. The edge of fullness is where your life stops being theoretical and becomes real. The monad's map includes this edge. It is not surprised by it. The possibility of Sophia's move, of misaligned creation, of lower worlds and ignorant gods, is already folded into the vast intelligence of the One. But that does not mean the suffering that follows is trivial. It is real. Souls get hurt. Light gets buried. Whole civilizations become laboratories for confusion. The map does not romanticize this. It simply insists that underneath it, something wiser is at work. At this step in the map, the question changes. It is no longer just, what is the monad? Or, what is the pleroma? It becomes, what happens when aspects of the One experiment with separation? And more personally, what happens when I live as if I am separate from my source? The cosmic drama and your private struggles are not unrelated stories. They are reflections. The stern truth is that love takes risks. The monad allows aspects of itself like Sophia, and eventually like you, to move into configurations where forgetting is possible. It does this not out of cruelty, but out of a confidence in the underlying indestructibility of what you are. The map includes both the edge and the return path, but it will not walk the path for you. That part is yours. By now the map may sound very far away. Monad, Barbello, eons, Pleroma, the edge of fullness. But here is the pivot. This is not just a story about something up there. The secret of the monad's map is that every step it takes before creation is encrypted in your own soul. You are not just hearing a myth. You are hearing your own internal anatomy described in symbolic language. The monad's silence lives in you as the ground of awareness. The part of you that can observe thoughts, emotions, and sensations without being identical to them. Every time you rest as that awareness, even for a few seconds, you are returning to the first step in the map. You are remembering who you are beneath the noise the demiurge's world screams at you. Barbello, the first thought, lives in you as your deepest intuition. Not every passing idea is Barbello, but that one profound sense that something wants to be born through your life, that repeated, quiet knowing you keep pushing away, that is your first thought. It is the monad's own creativity brushing against the edge of your personal existence, asking if you are willing to be a womb for it. The eons live in you as the faculties you know by different names. Mind, when it is clear. Truth, when you stop lying to yourself. Word, when you speak from your core instead of from fear. Life, when you choose vitality over numbness. Grace, when you soften toward yourself. Faith, when you walk without guarantees, but with a sense of inner rightness. When these are aligned, you are a micro-pleroma, a fullness in miniature. The edge of the pleroma lives in you as the temptation to live without reference to your source. Every time you act from egoic impulse, from desperate longing to prove yourself, From fear of missing out on some finite prize, you reenact Sophia's solitary creation. You step into experiments that may have consequences you do not foresee. Some of those experiments will become your greatest teachers, others will become your greatest regrets. The demiurge, later on the map, is not just an outer principle. He is the voice in your mind that claims to be the only God. This ego, this trauma, this identity is all you are. There is nothing beyond this. When you believe that voice, you live in his world. When you question it, you begin to remember the monad's world instead. The blueprint is there. Silence, self-knowing. First thought. Emanation of capacities, fullness, risk, fracture, return. Every stage is present in your spiritual life. You don't need to believe in the monad like a dogma. You can test this in your own experience. Sit down, get quiet, and watch. Awareness, intuition, thought, expression, consequence, longing to come home. It's all there. The deepest insult the demiurgic system ever gave you was not that it lied about history or cosmology. It's that it told you the map was outside you, locked in books and institutions, controlled by authorities. The secret of the monad says the opposite. The primordial steps are written into your nervous system, your psyche, your very sense of I. When you start to trust that, you stop looking up at a sky idol and start looking inward toward the source that never moved. Most religious stories start the clock too late. They begin with a creator God already in motion, speaking, shaping, commanding. They tell you this is the ultimate, the top of the chain, the Alpha and Omega. The Gnostic map politely, and sometimes not so politely, disagrees. It says that commanding voice is not the beginning. It is several steps down. There was a monad before there was a demiurge. This matters because the God you imagine shapes the way you imagine yourself. If your ultimate reference point is a jealous, insecure ruler, then you will live as a subject in a court, always trying to please, always afraid of exile. If your ultimate reference point is an infinite silence that loves by emanating, reflecting, and knowing, then you will live as an emanation. Responsible, yes, but never fundamentally rejected. The demiurge, the blind creator who declares himself the only God, is a truncated echo of the monad. He is power without self-awareness, creation without full memory of source. When he says, "I alone am God," he is diagnosing his own ignorance. He literally cannot see beyond his own domain. He is not evil in the cartoon sense. He is more tragic, a partial light pretending to be the whole. When you mistake the demiurge for the monad, you live in a constant state of spiritual gaslighting. Your deepest intuitions about love and truth are at war with the doctrines you've been handed. You are told to doubt your own conscience whenever it conflicts with a text or a tradition. You are told that the voice that shames you is holy, and the whisper that comforts you is dangerous. And then you wonder why you feel crazy. The map of the monad is stern here. It tells you to grow up, to stop confusing the first loud thing that claimed to be God with the one that never has to shout. To recognize that some images of God are developmental, useful at certain stages, but deeply harmful if never outgrown. To realize that part of awakening is reparenting your own theology, replacing the tyrant with the source that came before him. This does not mean hating religion or throwing away every scripture or mocking the sincere faith of others. It means developing the courage to ask the question you were told never to ask. Is this really what the infinite is like? If the answer you're given makes the infinite smaller than the love you've actually tasted in your own heart, question that answer. The monad is not less compassionate than your best moment. It is the source of it. To walk the secret map is to let your image of God die over and over until what remains cannot be drawn, cannot be named, cannot be used as a weapon. It can only be lived. And as your image dies, a new sense of self is born, not as a slave in a cosmos ruled by caprice, but as a participant in a reality whose origins are beauty, coherence, and unspeakable stillness. Knowing the map is nothing if it doesn't change how you move. You live in a world where the demiurge's fingerprints are everywhere. Systems built on fear, cultures hooked on domination and shame, economies that treat souls like fuel. To walk the monad's map inside this environment is to live as a creative act of defiance. You begin with silence, not as an escape, but as a returning home. You carve out moments where you drop roles, stories, arguments, and simply rest as awareness. You might call it meditation, prayer, or just breathing. It doesn't need a label. In those moments, you remember that beneath the storm of your life, there is a stillness that has never been injured. From that silence, you allow first thought to arise. Not the frantic, scattered thoughts of fear, but the deep intuition that comes when you ask, what is truly mine to do? What is the monad trying to express through this particular life? You may not get a full blueprint, you might just get the next step. Trust that. The monad doesn't rush. It's not in a hurry. Creation can take as long as it needs. Then you let your capacities line up like eons. You engage your mind to discern what is true, your word to speak it, your life force to embody it, your grace to hold your own imperfections gently, your faith to move even when you are not guaranteed a result. When these are in conflict, you don't despair. You bring them back to the silence that orders them. You remember that you are always standing at an edge. Every day offers chances to act from separation or from source, to create from ego or from alignment, to reenact Sophia's solitary mistake, or to co-create with something deeper. You will not choose rightly every time. You will fall. You will misjudge. But instead of drowning in shame, you use each misstep as a reminder to return to the map. Walking this way does not make you superior. It makes you more responsible. You can no longer blame the world or God or fate for everything. You see the patterns. You know when you are in the demiurge's current and when you are in the monads. And once you know, pretending not to know becomes a special kind of agony. The only cure is honesty. The reward is not a trouble-free life. The reward is coherence. You begin to feel less like a scattered collection of impulses and more like a single, clear flame. You may still suffer, still grieve, still lose things you love, but something in you remains unshaken because it is rooted in the part of the story that comes before creation and after its dissolution. The secret map of the monad is not a diagram on a wall. It is the story of your own being, told from the inside out. You began in silence. You moved into self-knowing. You felt a first thought stir, a first longing to express. You emanated capacities, mind, heart, word, will, and tried to live them. You tasted moments of fullness. You stepped to the edge, took risks, broke yourself, lost yourself, and now you are here, listening to this, because somewhere in you, the memory of the source will not die. Before the demiurge, before any counterfeit god claimed ownership of your soul, there was the One. Before any religion taught you who you were allowed to be, there was a presence that already knew you completely and loved you without condition. Before any wound, there was wholeness. Before any shame, there was innocence. Before any exile, there was home. That does not erase what has happened since. Your pain is real. Your trauma is real. The distortions you've internalized are not illusions, but they are not the foundation. They are overlays. They are weather patterns in a sky that is older than storms. When you align with the monad's map, you do not pretend the storms aren't there. You simply stop confusing them with the sky. So here is the invitation. Stop living as if you were born at chapter 3. Stop letting your story begin with sin, with failure, with smallness. Begin it where it actually begins, in the silence of the monad, in the first turning toward self-knowing, in the luminous womb of Barbello, in the fullness of the Pleroma. Let that be your starting point. Let that be your reference. When you remember that, you can walk through this world without bowing to its false gods. You can honor your body without worshipping materialism. You can engage with traditions without surrendering your discernment. You can love fiercely without confusing love with submission to abuse. You can become, slowly and imperfectly, a human whose inner map matches the one that existed before creation itself. If something in you feels like it has just remembered an old dream, one you had before you were born, don't ignore it. That feeling is the monad knocking from the inside. It's the Pleroma whispering through your veins. It's the eons stretching in your psyche after a long sleep. If this message resonated with you, stay close. This channel exists to help you remember what you knew before this world taught you to forget, to walk with you through the eons, the Pleroma, Sophia, the demiurge, and back to the silence that birthed it all. And if you feel called to go even deeper, beyond teachings and into living myth, explore my Gnostic-inspired novels and audiobooks. They carry these same currents in story form, heists in false heavens, journeys through hidden realms, souls remembering their origin in the monad while trapped inside counterfeit worlds. All links are in the description below. Your soul is older than every lie ever told about it. The map was never lost. It was always inside you.